Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Fun Duck's Histocast.
I'm Sonia.
And I'm Catherine.
Today we're going to be taking a deep dive into the issue of the American dream and how the United States' current criminal justice system both prevents and allows people to achieve this.
We'll first define what American dreams means in the current society,
before then focusing in more on the cash bail system and the way that it can hinder people's pathways towards achieving this dream.
The American dream is an ideal that millions of Americans strive for. While the definition of the American dream has evolved over generations, there are some main values of it that have carried through to the present, which we define as equal opportunity to attain success and equal treatment for all, whether that be in our current economy or in the legal system with a focus on the criminal justice system.
And obviously, with the criminal justice system and the legal system coming into play here, both the government and as well as private organizations can have a huge effect on this attainability, especially as we will be going in to look at cash bail and the way that this affects who can and who cannot achieve the American dream.
The Judiciary Act was signed into law by George Washington in 1789, establishing judicial courts along with a cash bail system in the U.S. Cash bail was purposed for people with accused crimes to leave jail temporarily while making sure that the defendants still return for trial. The judge will set a bail amount based on the severity of the crime, and the defendant can choose whether or not to exchange payment with the court for their freedom. If the defendant does show up for the court and win, their payment will be returned, excluding the processing fees. If the defendant is unable to afford bail, they must remain in jail until the trial, which could take months or even years.
Alternatively, if an arrested individual cannot afford bail, there are private bail companies that can work with this individual that can help pay the bail bond for a premium fee, which is usually about 10% of the cost of the bail itself, which for some people may still not be affordable, but can help these people, if they can't pay the full bail, to at least get out of jail for that time and only lose a part of the money with some sort of collateral taken from them until they return to court. While most Americans can't afford 100% of their bail anyway, many of them still don't get help from these bail companies or cannot afford to be getting help from these companies, and American Progress finds that, quote, on any given day in 2022, 658,000 people were incarcerated under local authority in jails across the country, with more than 80% of them awaiting trial, not having yet been convicted of a crime.
In many of these cases, the defendants are innocent and are falsely accused. However, this period of incarceration can have severe effects on both the individuals as well as their families. Take the case of Khalif Browder. In 2010, Khalif Browder, a 16-year-old boy living in New York City, was falsely accused of stealing a backpack. Browder and his family was not able to afford the $3,000 bail that the judge set, so he had no choice but to await his trial in Rikers Island, one of the most violent jails in the U.S. During his confinement, he was harassed by jail guards and was treated violently by the inmates, and after spending 33 months in jail, Browder was released after the persecutors dropped his charges. However, he had trouble adjusting to his old life, and with the news that he might go back to jail again with a charge of disorderly conduct, Browder committed suicide. There are thousands of people with similar experiences to Khalif, where they are violently stripped away from their teenage life and are forced into confinement, which greatly damages their mental health, hinders their pathway to receiving education, and obtaining a job after incarceration as well.
These mental health problems often go unaddressed, and at this point, suicide is the leading cause of death in jails. And people detained pretrial are 6 times more likely to die by suicide than people who have been convicted and sentenced. Health in general goes overall unaddressed in prisons, but especially the mental health with these conditions in prisons can become so heavily deteriorated. These individual effects go past mental and into physical health as well, and these often are left unaddressed, as in more than 60% of the country's largest prisons, medical care for inmates is provided by private companies that are notorious for cutting corners.
This could not only lead to the severe damages of mental and physical health of the inmates with no chance to or opportunities to repair them, but also in some severe cases lead to death. Jeffrey Pendleton was charged with marijuana possession on March 8th of 2016, and he was given a low-figure money bail of $100. However, he was unable to pay the $100 because he was unemployed, and his previous job at Burger King was insufficient to support him. And on March 13th, just 5 days later after his incarceration, he was found unconscious in his cell and was pronounced dead just hours later. Pendleton's story was not an anomaly, with Pharrell Sampier, a 45-year-old man who also fell ill and later died in jail. His incarceration resulted in his severe emotional trauma and later caused him to fall gravely ill, which weakened his immune system. With a poor sanitation and air circulation in the jail cells, he later developed a disease after spending 2 years behind bars, resulting in his death.
The effects of this incarceration are profound to me. It makes sense that prisons should be acting as some sort of punishment to those who are guilty, but to this extent it seems a bit far to me. Why should we be condemning people to go to a place where they end up having their mental health deteriorated like this, especially people who are convicted pre-trial? We don't even know if they're guilty or not, and we're condemning them to this place with this terrible mental and physical health outlets.
Yeah, and then we're putting them in such an immature system in that, also, with a really high incarceration rates with, 12 million people in prison.
Yeah.
How there are so many people that is in there that, it just keep on compiling up, and then not a lot of people gets to get released because of, simply in reasons that they cannot afford bail to leave. So this is just, the prison conditions are not increasing, but the prison population is drastically increasing. And, what Sonia said, a lot of these cases, these defendants aren't even proven guilty. They are, in the case of Khalif, he was, although a system he was supposed to be innocent until proven guilty, he was guilty until he was proven innocent because he was assumed that he did commit a crime and he was forced to be incarcerated because he is failing to pay the $3,000 bail, which resulted in his long-term 33 months of incarceration, even though he didn't even steal one backpack, but he spent 3 years in jail.
Yeah, that to me is what really struck me the most. Khalif is someone who at that time was my age, right? Mm-hmm. This is someone who's 16 years old, who maybe they did steal something. They did make a mistake or they do go and steal something. Mm-hmm. How can we then sentence them to 3 years in jail before we even prove that? That's 3 whole years. That's almost a quarter of my lifetime.
Exactly, and then and then there's no way out for them. So we're not really giving them any mercy. We're not giving them any way out, even though it could be a very small misdemeanor causing them to spend that much of their life in there. And in some cases, people might argue Khalif is an outlier. People don't actually spend that long time in prison. Some might be 3 days, and there are officials, for example, court officials who actually claim that people aren't spending that much time pre-trial, and in a lot of the court cases, they are not considering as the amount of time people spend pre-trial as a part of their case. So, for example, if Khalif were to go to court, the judge would not be able to see that he's already spent 33 months in prison. So that is a record that is not going to be known to them. And some people will be like, oh wow, it's only 3 days in prison, but they do not understand how much damages those can cause to an individual, whether that be the violence they face in jail that could cause their emotional trauma, but also they are literally being removed from their previous fine life. They're taken away from their job, taken away from their education.
Yeah, that's crazy to me, especially at such a young age, right? 16 all the way up to 19. These are defining years of someone's life. You're finishing up high school, maybe getting a job, going in through work, and having to spend that time in jail in a place with such terrible conditions would, even if they are innocent, obviously it's clear to me that why it would have such terrible effects on mental and physical health, but it really is just so severe.
The negative effects of incarceration not only extends to the mental damages and the trauma that they cause, but also leads to their life after incarceration, such as when they're seeking out to find new jobs and reintegrating back into their old life.
Studies show that people who are incarcerated pre-trial have a probability of formal employment that is 9.4 percentage points lower than that of people who are released. In this, we can see that even simply pre-trial incarceration, not compared to people that weren't arrested or incarcerated previously, but even just to people that were released on bail or were released, is that much lower. That effect of even just only that pre-trial incarceration can have a huge effect on that employment opportunity, as well as their ability to have their housing in the future. Along with that, people incarcerated pre-trial were found in a Philadelphia study to earn $1,104 less within the 4 years after trial than those who were released pre-trial. And another study says that only 1 year of incarceration can result in an irreparable lifetime wage depression of 9%.
This directly ties into attainability of the American dream, as we see with these statistics that these people who are incarcerated after they leave jail, they have a much lower chance and they do not have the equal opportunity to attain the success as they do with the people who are not incarcerated, as this could go on their possible records that could hinder them from getting a job that they want to receive. And this also ties into the lack of equal treatment, as after they're released back into society, people are going to view them differently, which causes their much lower income, as we see, and also greater wage depression and more chances to fall into poverty, as well as it limits their chances to move up the economic ladder because they were forced to move away from the previous life that they had before incarceration, and they're robbed of an opportunity for a second chance to achieve economic success.
Especially with these economic effects, this pretrial incarceration and cash bail system can have grave effects on the families of these individuals who are incarcerated. In a Philadelphia study, for example, it showed that half of the men employed prior to incarceration were their family's primary source of income, meaning that cash bail threatened the economic stability of their families. So even if charges are dropped, cash bail can lead to lifelong debts for families. These effects can spread past just economic within a family, as it can lead to tensions in the relationships between people and can greatly affect especially children in a family if their parents are incarcerated. One single mother, Lecha, was arrested in December of 2021 because she followed her then pregnant dog, Pandemic, into the neighbor's house after he had given birth to puppies there. So she went to go retrieve the puppies, and then the neighbor called the police on her, eventually getting her arrested for robbery, with her bail set at $60,000, a price that her and her family could not in any way afford at the time. She was left then to remain in Jefferson County Jail in Birmingham, Alabama, while she awaited her trial. Lecha said this time to have a great effect on her family, as she stated that everybody was crying and her children were trying to sell all of their things, their games, their TVs, everything, just to afford this bail. Meanwhile, her daughter didn't even want to talk to her, because this interaction between them, even just trying to call home from jail, was too painful for her family to deal with at the time, this emotion, where this single mother left these kids at home as she was unable to pay the bail. Lecha is only one of very many women who are stuck waiting in jail pre-trial, as statistics show that of the more than 115,000 women in United States jail, more than 60% of them haven't been convicted of a crime, but are still locked up and awaiting trial because they can't make bail. The true effects of this are furthered as we can come to understand that nearly 80% of women in jail are single moms.
As we can see, cash bail is actively setting families apart, and this not only hinders an individual's opportunity to obtain success in the American dream, but it also harms their families and prevents their families from also attaining the American dream, as we see with this example of the single mom, that her kids were left unattended without caretakers, which not only leads to them without, growing up without any caretakers and accurate education and adult advice, but also they're economically unstable. So it really just puts them down on the economic ladder with really little opportunities to grow from there.
Well, so far we've covered some of the problems with the cash bail system and the effects of this pretrial incarceration on people's home, work, family, etc. We have to, of course, acknowledge that this cash bail system does disproportionately affect people of color.
American Progress finds that the racial disparity in pretrial detention is very significant. In 2002, 69% of the people detained in pretrial were people of color. Meanwhile, black defendants are also more likely to be assigned bail with more significant amounts as well. Research have found that black defendants are 3.6% more likely to be assigned bail, and their bail is on average $7,280 higher. Meanwhile, black individual sentences are also usually 20% longer than white individuals when they commit the same crime, showing the racism that is present in our criminal justice system.
This clearly is a systematic issue. At the current moment, there isn't any sort of central authority that dictates bail amounts, right? So these are all determined on a case-by-case basis, and rather than having something central to refer back to. And so with this, more officials are able to use this to their benefit in this criminal legal system's financial structure. and are really able to take advantage of this in a way that I don't think is right. To the point where if these statistics which are true, right, with such a large amount of disproportionality in between these incarceration rates, as well as in between, especially these bail amounts, which are so much higher for these people of color. This cash bail system is already causing many people to lose the opportunity to strive for this American dream, to have economic success, stability, and to have this safe mental and physical health. But even now we can see how disproportionately it affects these people of color, leaving only more of these people of these minorities unable to strive for these equal opportunities and equal treatment that they deserve.
Exactly, and then we see that this is not only existing in our society where they're like not only discriminated in the workforce or in college acceptance or something like that, but also right now deeply rooted in our criminal justice system where we're continually criminalizing more people of color, and that is just continually fueling this broken system. Cash bail severely destabilizes a person and pushes them into a cycle of poverty and incarceration with no way out. A study in Kentucky showed that people who cannot afford bail are 40% more likely to commit another low-level crime, causing them to continue to have contact with the criminal justice system, known as the criminogenic effect.
Exactly. Cash bail has created a system that not only works directly against people from lower economic levels and people that are people of color, but also is really just a system that's fueling itself. It's trying to solve these problems with incarceration, trying to make sure that people can't take advantage of an opportunity while being released pretrial, trying to get them to only be able to do so with this bail money, but instead is just contributing to this problem of incarceration in the United States. It's genuinely just creating a cycle that's making things worse while also tearing down the families of so many people and their ability to go forward, to achieve the American dream, to achieve economic success, and to have these equal opportunities and equal treatment in the lives of them and their families.
Our government and criminal justice system is reversing the American dream, where instead of pushing people up the economic ladder, they're actively pushing people down and causing more people to fall into severe poverty if they were already in poverty before, with them unable to pay bail. Well, that was an intense discussion. Let's move on to our daily pun section.
Yay!
So, Sonia, why did the picture go to jail?
I don't know. Robbery?
Incorrect. Take another guess.
Stealing the Mona Lisa.
Oh, you're close, but not right. The answer is because it was framed.
That is so silly.
Oh my god, right? Doesn't it tie perfectly in with our topic?
It is so relevant. With an issue as widely impactful and complex as the cash bail system, we really have to get a broad picture to understand the full opinion of the public on this issue.
Some lawmakers and reformers of bail believe that cash bail needs to be abolished immediately. For example, former Governor Andrew Cuomo of New York thinks that cash bail system is extremely unjust to people in poverty. First, it violated the 8th Amendment for no excessive bail. Cuomo believes that the current amount that the judges are setting may not be, quote, excessive to the middle and upper class, but not to the lower class citizens. It also violated the due process and equal protection under the 14th Amendment. Wealthier people are able to have more freedom because they have more money for bail and lawyers, while people in poverty do not. Cuomo protests that cash bail needs to be abolished immediately in not only New York, but in all states. Also, Global Citizens, a movement to stop extreme poverty, believes that abolishing cash bail is necessary. People who cannot afford bail may lose their jobs and incomes during their period of confinement, which will lead to extreme poverty. However, other people and officials believe that abolishing cash bail is not so good of an idea. For instance, NYPD Deputy Commissioner John Miller opposes the elimination of cash bail. He stated that currently 89% of the arrested will not have to pay bail anyways. If cash bail was abolished, 99% of the criminals can walk out without bail after being accused. Miller believes with many people being released without having to be confined, it will threaten security. Criminals will no longer worry about the consequences and punishments of their offense, leading to an increase of crime rates, thus endangering the society.
Well, I understand what John Miller is saying and that, most people won't have to pay bail anyway. To me, it's hard to ignore the clear consequences on not only the individuals but the families with cash bail. Even if there are concerns for public safety, do we just ignore the safety of these people that are being convicted that may not even be actual criminals, that may not have done things that are unlawful. They might not even be guilty, and we're just going to set them into these places, into these prisons where their mental health has serious consequences on their mental health, on their physical health, and even on their families. I don't understand how we can really fully justify having the cash bail system as it is right now without at least some sort of reform, if not understanding a different way to go about it so that we don't have these severe effects on these people in the United States.
Mm-hmm. And if we're looking at the grander scheme, we're seeing how 12 million people are having contact with the criminal justice system. And if we're looking at 89% of that, that's a lot of people. So even if we're saying how he's saying that 89% of the people won't have to pay cash bail anyways, there's still a lot of people who are, especially people in poverty, who are faced with these large amounts that they cannot afford, which will trap these rest of the 11% of people in jail and continue to increase our prison population.
These issues, however, have not gone unnoticed, as bail reform movements started emerging in the 1960s with protesting for justice for poor people and the reduction or elimination of pretrial detention. After nearly 40 years of protesting, California became the first state in the nation to abolish cash bail. Signed by Governor Jerry Brown, the new law was put into effect in October of 2019, switching out the original unconstitutional cash bail into a risk assessment. This risk assessment determined if they should be kept or released from jail based on areas such as the defendant's age, criminal records, the severity of the offense, chances of returning for trial, and etc. And this, in some ways, contradicts what John Miller was saying before, because he was saying that everybody that would release would keep on doing these terrible crimes and keep on committing these crimes. But we can see that there is possibility of reform with these risk assessments. It's not like we would be setting everybody free. We don't have to completely abolish cash bail, and even if we did, we aren't just setting everybody free. We're still able to have this risk assessment to keep some sort of safety for the rest of the citizens and the rest of the community.
Following California, Alaska and New Jersey also abolished cash bail for the majority of the crimes. To further repair the damage of cash bail, the Bail Reform Act of 2020 was passed, making a long list of misdemeanors such as stalking, burglary, etc. that the judges are no longer able to give out cash bail for. Other than the actions from the government, nonprofit bail funds are also assisting people who cannot afford bails. Regular citizens can donate to a bail fund, which then uses the money to support people to pay their bail. And after the bail is returned from the defendant, the bail fund will recycle the money and support even more people. Other nonprofits such as the ACLU and Equal Justice Under Law are more focused on lawsuits challenging states on unconstitutional bail policies.
For example, with the example of Letchild, you might remember earlier from the podcast, the only way that she was able to get free from jail on that bail with her $60,000 bail and return to her family, which she had to leave to go into jail, was through help of nonprofit organizations. We were able to raise this money for her and get her out of jail, leading to a very emotional day where her family was finally able to reunite with her and they were able to move on.
Regardless of all the obstacles we have faced along the way to eliminate cash bail and to achieve reform, we have seen that we are being pushed onto a better path with these new state government and federal government regulations and new policies, and with these efforts coming from nonprofit organizations as well.
This is an issue that is affecting people throughout all communities in the United States today, especially those of lower economic status, as well as people of color. But this is an issue that without reform and without this push towards making this issue a little bit less worse and reforming the way that we are creating this cash bail amounts and the people that are being stuck in jail for this long, it's just going to be an issue that keeps on fueling itself, that keeps on supporting itself as we go in, causing these problems in education, in family, and the economics of these people, and stopping them from the opportunities that they deserve and that they strive for.
Yeah, and then as we see going time back to the question that we brought in the beginning of the podcast on the American dream, how our government and the people of the U.S. are constantly chasing the ideal of the American dream to have equal opportunity and to have equal treatment and to be innocent until proven guilty. And as we have seen that the system is not treating them the way that they were striving to be treated. However, we are continually making strides to reverse the trauma that has been done to them, to bring back innocent until proven guilty, and to make sure that this does not happen to more people.
Without reform, not only from the government on these more federal and state levels, but also especially from these nonprofit organizations, these private organizations that are working to help, that are working to alleviate this issue, we wouldn't be able to have the reform we have now, and I don't believe we'd be able to bring in more reform in the future. I think that these play a vital role in helping make this reform happen. Obviously, there's this need for activism and this need for an understanding of the issue in larger communities in the United States, but these other private companies, as well as the government, I believe, play a vital role in helping this reform push forward so that we can stop this unequal opportunity for people in the United States.
And it is important that during this process that I think it is important for us to understand both perspectives, that we understand that there are concerns where there are people with opposing opinions against cash bail, and there are people supporting the elimination of cash bail, that we take both perspectives into account so that we can achieve a system that is really keeping our community safe, but also making sure that these millions of people who are innocent or who are in poverty do not continually get pushed into this deadly systems that traps them, that prevents them from moving up the economic ladder, and that prevents them ultimately from achieving and attaining their American dream.
So, Catherine, in terms of the cash bail system and the rest of the United States, who is this American dream for?
Well, as we have come to a conclusion with our podcast, that the American dream is really for the rich and privileged, as they are able to have the money and the resources to buy their way through paying cash bail, buy their way out of prison, so that they can have the second opportunity to attain success. While we see that people in poverty, minority groups, people of color, single mothers, they are excluded from this dream. And which is why we see that it is disproportionately affecting millions of people and moving a lot of people down the economic ladder. In the end, we would like to conclude with a little poem.
Cash bail will tear us down.
Maybe with reform, we will not drown.
For all to have the American dream,
we should consider pulling apart the system at the seams. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Fun Ducks Histocast. We will see you next time. Bye!